Damn it, I got greedy. That last $2 million was probably the red flag. I should have walked away then. Something felt off about that bill. Damn it. Now they're closing in, but they think I'm oblivious. At least this will help. I still have a window to disappear and make sure they can't track me further. Good thing I planned for this. But who am I really, and who's after me? Right now, my identity doesn't matter. It's about to vanish anyway. In just 2 hours, I'll be a completely different person. The trail they're following will be a dead end before they can figure out who I am. What I'll be, or soon become, is a hacker. A damn good one. A furious one with a precise list of targets. I'm taking down OD cartels, keeping an eye on their financial moves, and quietly handing over proof to the authorities. Personally, I've exposed 4 politicians, at least 50 cops, a dozen soldiers across borders, and countless other traitors. I've also drained over $100 million from their accounts, taking a small cut for myself and funneling the rest, around 80%, into charities that support drug addicts and rehab programs. Why, you ask? It all started with my little sister getting tangled up with the wrong guy. I never liked him, but she wouldn't listen to me. I tried everything, but she made her choice. After our parents passed away, I did everything I could to protect her. I've always had a talent for computers. But those 2 dark years of despair, after I discovered what was left of her, pushed me from skilled to almost supernatural. Hiding away in the basement of our parents' old house, I dug deep into dark secrets and learned to manipulate them. I found backdoors in most security systems. Somewhere during those years, the DEA ended up with explosive information about a gang of drug dealers who tortured and killed my sister. Rival cartels caught wind that this gang had evidence they could use to make deals, so they moved fast, quicker than the government could respond. In the end, the authorities saved a lot of money on legal fees. Now, the people hunting me are working for the cartel, the same one I took $30 million from. I should have stopped at $28 million, but I found another small account. Something felt wrong about it, but I was young, angry, and reckless. By the time that money made its way through 40 accounts across 6 countries, my anti-hacking system started setting off alarms. They planted a trace on the account where the breach started. It'll take them time. They had to wade through about 100 IP addresses just to get to the servers I bypassed. I plugged in my flash drive and ran a few commands. The trace was cut off, leaving them with no way to access my data. The building I called home went up in flames thanks to a homeless fire that got out of control. My hard drives, memory cards, and all my personal files burned up in the desert heat. Convinced there was no way to recover anything from the ashes, I grabbed my van and headed west, reaching Las Vegas 4 days later. "Sweetheart, I need your help. The computer's acting weird again," I said, turning to my beautiful wife, Sophia. "Honestly, David, how can a 25-year-old guy not know how to fix a computer?" she joked, giving me a quick kiss on the forehead. A few clicks later, I was back to checking my emails. "Dinner's in 30 minutes. "Thanks, babe," I said, watching her head into the kitchen. It's been years since Sophia and I got married, and I still can't believe how lucky I am. After leaving behind my old life, I reinvented myself as a truck driver at a local lumber mill, earning decent pay thanks to the union. I withdrew a couple $100,000 from one of my offshore accounts and bought a cozy 3-bedroom house on an acre of land. Next to the house, I built a discreet storage shed and created a hidden room to upgrade my computer setup. It looked like a regular concrete floor, but beneath it, there were stairs leading down to an underground space. I decided to take a break from hunting down drug dealers and cartels for a while. I had enough saved up in case of an emergency, and it seemed like a good time to lay low. Still, I didn't want to lose my edge, and I needed to stay current with technology. The shed became my hobby space, where I restored classic muscle cars, something my wife had zero interest in. She never set foot in there. It also gave me the solitude I needed to go online and tinker without her catching on. You might wonder why I keep this side of myself hidden from her. Well, she knows me as just a simple mechanic and truck driver with no real knowledge of computers. When we first met and started dating, I couldn't exactly tell her that I was a hacker, known in the underground as Ghost. First, the feds were after me for cybercrimes, eager to recruit me for their own purposes. Second, dangerous criminal organizations were hunting me. If they caught wind of who I was, things would get ugly fast. How would that affect our relationship? Do I even need to ask? After we got married, I took a few extra steps to protect her. It was all for her safety. As long as she stayed in the dark, they couldn't use her to get to me. It was better that she only knew the man she married. Let me tell you a bit about my wife. First of all, she's the most stunning woman in the world, at least to me. I've heard people talk about how every woman is the most beautiful in their eyes, and I always wonder how that can be. I won't sugarcoat it. She might seem ordinary to others, but to me, she's a goddess. It's all about perspective and taste. She's 5 feet 6 inches, with wavy, coppery bronze hair that cascades down to her mid-back. Her emerald green eyes are mesmerizing. She's a 34D with a small waist, flat stomach, fuller hips, and an undeniably captivating backside measuring 40 inches. Her legs are long, slender, and toned, with a golden sun-kissed glow. Her features, a delicate nose, high cheekbones, dimples that show when she smiles, full, kissable lips, and a modest chin, just enough to make her face unforgettable. So, how did we meet? I was working at the sawmill one afternoon when she walked in. She needed some boards for shelving in her new apartment. While we picked out what she needed, she mentioned how she wasn't great with tools. I saw an opening and offered to come by after work to set up the shelves. My only condition, she'd buy the beer and dinner would be my payment. The next evening, dinner turned into dancing. Sorry to disappoint, but there was no wild, passionate love story here. Our date ended with a simple, sweet kiss on the cheek. Truth be told, I was pretty shy around women. Let me explain. When I stole all that money from the cartel, I was just a 19-year-old, scrawny kid weighing 110 pounds. A total computer nerd. My romantic history?
Non existen.
Since moving to Vegas, I'd only had 3 encounters with prostitutes. The first was underwhelming, she was robotic. The second, at a brothel in Pahrump, at least pretended to care. The third was more hands-on. I paid for the whole night and had her teach me how to truly please a woman. Now, I was in a real relationship with a woman I genuinely admired. It wasn't until our 5th date that we finally made love. I took her to dinner at the Stratosphere, then we hit a lively club on the Strip. After indulging in a pricey bottle of wine and dancing for a couple of hours, we went back to my place. I always thought she was beautiful, but seeing her naked, she was a goddess. I didn't even need to ask if everything was okay. Her damp sheets told me all I needed to know. As long as I kept her happy, I was content. Apparently, my last prostitute experience had taught me a thing or two. Plus, a whole year of hitting the gym for sports, combined with my manual labor, had helped me bulk up. Now I was 6 feet 1 inch tall. Despite thinking of myself as a nerd, one thing I never paid attention to was the size of my manhood. I figured I was just average like everyone else. Of course, the courtesans had to compliment me on it, right? But I never really believed them. After dating Sophia for about 6 months, I popped the question, and 6 months later we were married. We were happy. Sophia worked as an accountant for a large national company with offices in Vegas, earning a decent salary. Between her income and mine, we lived comfortably. I never needed to dip into my secret accounts. We dined at fancy restaurants, saw shows, spent weekends on the lake with our pontoon boat, and drove nice cars. Our sex life was great, about 4 times a week. Since we didn't have kids yet, we had fun all over the house, in the backyard, in the pool, and in the hot tub. We loved mixing it up. Most nights after work, I'd spend a couple of hours in my shop before dinner. Half the time I'd be working on a project, the other half I'd be in my hidden room on my computer. I wasn't doing anything outright illegal, I was just hacking into places I shouldn't have been. I never stole anything or messed with systems. I was just fine-tuning my skills. Sure, I could have taken tons of data and money, but I didn't want to leave any evidence. After dinner, we'd curl up on the couch, watch a movie, and sometimes make love for a couple of hours before bed. I continued to play the part of a clueless techie. After all, who would suspect that someone who can barely check their email is one of the world's most wanted hackers? Meanwhile, I was hacking into the systems of banks, governments, and major corporations. I also reprogrammed the bots I once controlled. I kept my tracks covered by launching my hacks from foreign servers, sometimes even using multiple servers at once. About 6 months ago, I started noticing Sophia becoming more tense. At first, I didn't think much of it, but soon enough, our usual rhythm had changed. Our lovemaking dropped from about 4 times a week to only 2. She began working longer hours and seemed drained by the time she got home. Most nights, she'd head straight for the shower, grab a quick dinner, and then head to bed. When I asked her about it, she casually mentioned something about a big bill they were trying to sort out at work. It sounded reasonable enough at the time. Every now and then, she'd call me from her office on a Friday afternoon, letting me know she was going out for happy hour with a few coworkers. It wasn't unusual. She'd done this a few times before, and it never raised any alarms. After about 6 months, though, I asked her how much longer these outings would be going on, figuring the bill would either be settled or forgotten by then. She told me it would probably take another week or 2 before things calmed down. Feeling like she deserved some pampering after all her hard work, I surprised her with a full spa day for the following Saturday. She was thrilled when I presented the gift to her on Wednesday night, and after expressing her thanks, we ended up in bed together, enjoying each other thoroughly. Saturday came, and she left for her spa day at 9 a.m., kissing me goodbye before heading out. She didn't return until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I grabbed my coffee and made my way to the shop to finish up the engine I had been working on. About an hour later, I took a break and went to the computer room. Up until then, I had made it a rule not to meddle with Sophia's work, just like I never interfered with my own company's systems. I had a strong principle about that, never hack into my own workplace or hers. But as I sat there, I couldn't help but wonder about this major account she was dealing with. Maybe it was worth investigating further. Their security was ridiculously easy to bypass, and within minutes I was in. My first target, Sophia's computer. Since she was working on the project, I figured I could uncover some valuable details. Oddly enough, there was nothing significant about their new major clients. I searched using terms like offer, new client, and quote, but came up empty-handed. Then I started exploring her folders. That's when I stumbled across a locked one, labeled Photos for Ethan. Ethan? I knew exactly who he was. I'd met him a few times at corporate events with Sophia. She'd often bragged about how talented he was with computers, but I never trusted him. Took me seconds to break into the folder. What I found inside made my stomach drop. Dozens of intimate photos, some of Sophia in her office, others depicting her engaged in sexual acts with another man in various positions. What hit me hardest was that some of these acts were things she'd always denied me. I just sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like a part of me had just died. Eventually, I snapped out of my trance and began plotting how I would confront her when she returned home. Divorce was inevitable at this point. I still had a couple of hours before she came back, so I dug deeper, searching for more evidence. I figured this whole thing must have started about 6 months ago when I first noticed her acting differently. When I dug into her emails, I was stunned. The affair with Ethan wasn't a recent thing. It had been going on for nearly a year, long before we even met. If that was the case, why had she started a relationship with me? What was really going on? One email caught my attention. It mentioned accounting discrepancies with some of their major clients and even referred to an offshore account. I switched over to Ethan's computer next. Sure enough, there were more photos of Sophia, some from a motel room, others in another man's bedroom. Realizing I needed more time, I decided to back up everything from both their computers, as well as the files on the company's network, onto a spare drive connected to my server. Out of habit, I checked the personnel folder on the server and froze when I saw my own name listed. Before I logged off, I secretly installed spyware on both Sophia and Ethan's computers, as well as on the company server, ensuring that all their activities would be funneled to my system. Needless to say, I didn't get much done on my car projects for a while. When Sophia finally returned from her spa day, she was extra affectionate, expressing her thanks with a night of passionate lovemaking. I couldn't help but feel disgusted by her betrayal, but I'm only human. It was hard to resist such closeness with such a beautiful, eager woman. Even though she turned into a liar and a cheater, in my eyes, she was still exactly what I wanted. The next day, Sunday, I went back to the shop. Sophia was still asleep, so I took the opportunity to hack into her phone and install spyware there too. This way, I could discreetly copy her text messages to my computer and record all of her phone calls on a separate hard drive. I'd also be able to monitor her online activity. When she left around 10 a.m. for a shopping trip with a friend, I noticed she had disabled the Find My Friends app on her phone. Since I couldn't track her through that, I resorted to hacking into her car's GPS system to keep tabs on her movements. Surprisingly, Sophia did, in fact, go to the mall. Once I confirmed she wouldn't be returning anytime soon, I seized the opportunity to take her laptop. My first move was to copy all its contents onto a separate hard drive. Then, I installed a keylogger and set up the camera for remote access. Knowing I didn't have much time before she came back, I quickly skimmed through her browser history. That's when I found something interesting, a second email address. I also saw multiple visits to a bank in the Cayman Islands, which definitely warranted further investigation down the road. I wiped the grease and oil off my hands, creating the illusion that I had been working on the car when I heard Sophia return. Then we went through the usual evening routine: shower, dinner, a movie, and eventually, bed. For the next week, I maintained the appearance of an oblivious, caring husband. Each evening, I'd head to the shop, pretending to tinker with one of my cars for a couple of hours. In reality, I was going over the data I had gathered from my covert operations. Then, one Tuesday evening, I came across an exchange between Sophia and Ethan that made my heart race. Ethan warned her about deleting the browsing history from my laptop after using it. Why on earth did she need my laptop? Sure, I'd set it up to connect to servers after purchasing it, but the idea of spying on myself never crossed my mind. The following evening, while reviewing updates from their work computers, I saw another data stream coming through. I immediately recognized it. It was from my personal laptop. I focused all my attention on it. As I examined the stream, the picture became clearer. Money transfers were happening. I activated the laptop camera and redirected the feed to another screen. Sophia was at my computer, wearing a Bluetooth earpiece, and the microphone picked up her voice during a phone call. I set up a live feed of the conversation on a third screen and watched as Sophia, with Ethan's guidance, transferred $50,000 from a bogus company account to a bank in the Cayman Islands, all executed through my computer. Once she finished, she cleared the history and logged off. What the hell is going on here? I still hadn't looked into my personnel file from their HR folder. When I finally did, I made an even more shocking discovery. I had been listed as a computer security consultant, something I had no knowledge of. Apparently, Ethan, the head of their IT department, had made the hiring decision. I also found several payments made to me, all routed into the Cayman Islands account. It was clear now, I had unknowingly been dragged into a scheme where Sophia and Ethan used my computer and IP address to funnel large sums of money from a fake company account to an offshore bank. And of course, I discovered the truth about Sophia and Ethan's affair. Even before I met Sophia, I had a gut feeling something wasn't right. Now, fully aware of what was happening, I knew I had to reassess the situation. I needed to understand just how deep this went and figure out my next steps. This wasn't just some casual mistake. It was a major operation, and I was smack in the middle of it. When I looked deeper into the Cayman Islands account, I discovered nearly $10 million stashed away. The transactions had started roughly 6 months after Sophia and I got married. They had gone to great lengths to cover their tracks, even attempting to obscure the computer used for the money transfers. A closer look at my personal file revealed a number of concerning details. I was clearly a target. When everything inevitably came to light, I'd be the one taking the fall. So what do I do now? Strangely enough, keeping my composure around Sophia hasn't been too difficult. Did she want to maintain a physical relationship with me?
Indulget her.
As things progressed, I found myself enjoying the time I spent with both her and Ethan. What can I say? She's attractive. And yes, I seized every chance I could for physical closeness. The following Saturday, I started sifting through her emails from the time we first met. That's when I learned the full extent of their plan. They had targeted me as their scapegoat from the beginning. Sophia had found me attractive and figured a physical relationship wouldn't be an issue, but she had concerns about my apparent lack of computer knowledge. Ethan, on the other hand, saw it as an advantage. The less I knew about computers, the less likely I was to figure out their scheme. Now, it was time to execute my plan for retaliation. I began putting everything in motion. First, I opened a couple of new bank accounts, laying the groundwork. Then, I activated the bot army I had carefully assembled. Most of these bots would serve as a distraction, but I had a select group that could be traced back. It was designed to be a challenge, one that would require a skilled hacker to follow the trail. I didn't want it to be too obvious or easy. As part of my preparations, I deleted the personnel folder with my name from Sophia's company servers and made sure to alter the file transfers on my laptop, rerouting them to display a different IP address to avoid a repeat of previous mistakes. I unleashed a powerful virus on my laptop, then disconnected it from my secret servers. Later that evening, when I checked my email, I found that the virus had done its work, ravaging my laptop from the spam I had opened, leaving it nearly unusable. Useless. I wasn't surprised by the look of shock on Sophia's face when she saw the damage. The next morning, I came across a conversation between Sophia and Ethan. Apparently, they were nearing the final stages of their scheme. They just needed to complete 2 more transfers to secure another $10 million before springing the trap on me. Their plan was to discover the theft and frame me for it. Since Sophia would be the one to uncover the missing funds, she would lead the investigation. Meanwhile, Ethan, as the IT manager, would oversee the cyber operations. Of course, all evidence would point squarely at me. Sophia would file for divorce and I'd rot in jail. Then, in about a year, she'd marry Ethan. While there might be some suspicion about Sophia's involvement, she'd deflect any doubts by claiming she had been the one investigating and that I had been hiding my computer skills from her. To the outside world, she would appear to be the victim, someone who had been deceived by me and exploited to access the company's computer systems. They laughed at the thought of me answering questions about the missing money when I wouldn't even know what the police were talking about. Sophia then offered to buy me a new laptop, suggesting that they could complete the final transfers in the next 3 weeks. This gave me a clear timeline. On Monday, I informed my boss that I needed a week off for personal reasons. No one questioned it, as I had plenty of leave time saved up. I spent the rest of the day searching for the toughest, most ruthless divorce lawyer in town and booked an appointment for the next day. While they thought they had 3 weeks, they'd be lucky to make it 2. When I got home, I fired up my computer and got to work. I accessed Ethan's home computer. For someone in IT, you'd think he'd be savvy enough to shut it down when not in use, but instead, he just turned off the monitor. I routed his computer through a server in Belarus, ensuring that even though the connection would eventually be wiped, his computer would be a dead end for anyone trying to trace it back to him. The cartel I had infiltrated 5 years ago had taught me a thing or two about security. Despite the fact that they had changed their accounts and passwords, they were still using the same banks. I knew their passwords were only effective as long as they didn't store them on personal devices, which are prone to phishing attacks. This was just the first phase. Ethan would be dealt with later, after I had taken care of Sophia. He wouldn't survive this, but for now, I still needed him to help bring Sophia down. As usual, I headed to my shop to work on my car, while Sophia went to Walmart to buy the new laptop. While she was out, I laid the foundation for my plan. It was crucial that she be home when using the computer. If she wasn't, she could claim an alibi. When she returned, she messaged me, letting me know that she had purchased the laptop and that it would take about an hour to set it up. I expressed my thanks and got to work. The first step was to sever all connections with Ethan. Despite my deep resentment for her, I couldn't bring myself to wish her too much suffering. Ethan was likely to face torture or worse, while Sophia might only end up in prison for decades. Who could say for sure? I set up a separate server route to Sophia's laptop, creating a direct connection to her work computer and, from there, to the company servers. A staggering $20 million was funneled into 4 accounts under her name. Travel plans were finalized, ensuring she had a one-way ticket to the Cayman Islands, scheduled for Thursday morning, just before she would leave her computer unattended. I scrubbed Ethan from her contacts, deleted every email exchange between them, and erased the account's history completely. Then, I removed all traces of my spyware, taking a calculated risk that she wouldn't have enough time to notice. Too bad for her. Next, I severed the connection to her laptop. Once that was done, I disabled the wireless router in the house. I had a superior router at the shop, which Sophia had no clue about. As she tried to work, a message popped up on her phone from the spyware I had planted. Apparently, she had just finished setting up the laptop for me when the internet went down, right as she was about to make another transfer on my computer. I couldn't help but laugh at their frustration. While they were preoccupied with the issue, I quickly moved all the stolen money into new accounts under Sophia's name. Once those accounts were drained, I shut them down. I then removed the spyware from Sophia's phone to avoid any unwanted attention. Pleased with my work, I headed out for dinner, knowing tomorrow would be an eventful day. Sophia, on the other hand, appeared visibly anxious. When I arrived home, she told me the new laptop was ready, but that the internet was down, preventing me from logging in or checking my email. Little did she know, that inconvenience was barely a blip on my radar. Throughout the evening, she was preoccupied, fixated on her phone during the entire movie. I noticed her growing frustration, suspecting that her attempts to access the account had failed. She seemed to be messaging someone as well. As I went to bed, a smile spread across my face. There would be no intimacy tonight. The next morning, I slipped out of the house before Sophia left for work. I had my appointment with the lawyer to look forward to. I couldn't help but wonder how Sophia's day would unfold. Soon enough, I'd have all the answers I needed. When I walked into my lawyer's office, it was like something out of a TV drama. You know those courtroom shows where a dashing, sharply dressed lawyer strides in and effortlessly dominates the room? That was my lawyer. Standing at 5 feet 6 inches, with an angelic face and curves that could make a race car swerve. Her legs seemed to go on forever. Her presence was enough to stir any man's heart. She exuded confidence, and I knew she would be a force to be reckoned with in court. Once confidentiality was ensured, I opened up to her. I told her about my wife's infidelity throughout our entire marriage and then detailed the embezzlement scheme. When she asked how I knew all of this, I gave her a partial explanation. Truth be told, I spun quite the tale. I told her I had been using Sophia's laptop because mine was malfunctioning, and that's when I stumbled across a folder of explicit photos and incriminating emails. Those emails exposed Sophia's betrayal and their illicit dealings. I just wanted out of this marriage before it all went public. She agreed to take on the case and begin preparing the necessary documents. She said she could serve Sophia by the end of the week, but I asked her to hold off for a moment. I had a sudden flash of inspiration and didn't want to tip my hand too early. We wrapped up the meeting, and I headed home, eager to execute the next steps. I powered up my system, reactivated the home Wi-Fi, and got to work. I left the spyware active on Sophia's work computer, knowing things were bound to go south quickly. The next morning, the storm hit. An emergency meeting was called, and the $20 million theft was uncovered. It triggered an immediate investigation. In the meantime, I hacked into Ethan's phone, and he traced the theft back to Sophia. He discovered their account had been drained, with the funds transferred to new accounts. Accusations flew, but no one could provide a plausible explanation. Suddenly, Sophia received an email calling her to a meeting with the CEO, CFO, and head of security. This was about to get interesting. The sound of several cars pulling into my driveway broke my quiet moment. I quickly secured the premises, heading to the main store and making sure the hidden door was locked. No need for anyone to stumble upon that. To maintain appearances, I slicked some lube on myself, mimicking the look of someone who had been working on a car. As I left the store, I saw police cars and a large Chevrolet Suburban parked outside. The officers were dressed in standard uniforms, but the ones stepping out of the SUVs had FBI clearly printed on their windbreakers. I couldn't resist my curiosity. I barely glanced at the warrants before letting them into the house, offering my full cooperation since I had nothing to hide. Playing the gracious host, I pointed them to my wife's computer and mentioned mine, which had barely been used since we got it yesterday, especially with the Wi-Fi down the previous night. "Take whatever you need," I said casually. "I'm not very tech-savvy." My story held up during the long hours of questioning at the station. After all, I was just a truck driver, barely familiar with computers. I claimed ignorance about my wife's work as an accountant and insisted I didn't know her clients. A one-way ticket out of the country. That was news to me. Only she would have arranged it. Poor Ethan, forced to testify against Sophia, must have felt betrayed when he realized she had transferred all the money into her accounts, leaving him with nothing. The authorities soon figured out that I was clueless about the whole situation. Despite searching my store thoroughly, they never found the hidden entrance to the computer room. After a while, they sent me home. Meanwhile, Sophia was arrested while I was being interrogated. I imagine Ethan must have been gutted when he saw that Sophia had cut him off, moved the funds, and skipped town, leaving him high and dry. Fortunately, I had anticipated this moment. As her husband, it was only logical that I'd be pulled into the investigation. So when she made her one call, I made sure to secure a lawyer for her. I did my homework and carefully selected a lawyer who wasn't exactly the best in town. More like the one who was most likely to help her get convicted. I didn't want a high-powered attorney who could possibly win her case. This was a federal matter, and if she got sentenced to 20 years, that would be 20 years without the possibility of parole. At her bail hearing, I used our house as collateral to get her released, though she had to wear an ankle monitor due to her flight risk. Even though I couldn't stand her, I kept up the act of the caring husband. Thankfully, her emotional turmoil kept her away from any marital duties. I made sure to swap out her phone, which had been seized as evidence, replacing it with a new one rigged with my spyware. Strangely, Ethan blocked her when she tried to contact him. He knew his role. He would testify against her, and there was no way he was helping her now. Sophia, ever stubborn, rejected the plea deal. She still insisted that someone had framed her, convinced she could win. Sure, she'd taken half the money, but she hadn't used that account, hadn't bought the ticket, hadn't fired her partner. Nothing had connected her to the crime other than circumstantial evidence. In her mind, she was innocent, and she genuinely believed she would triumph. The trial was nothing short of amusing. Watching Ethan testify against his lover was a spectacle. The computer records revealed his inner turmoil. He had begun to suspect Sophia was planning to flee, leaving him behind. As Sophia sat there, hearing him throw her under the bus, the transformation from love to resentment was palpable. Over the 3 days of testimony, I watched her deteriorate. She struggled to provide a coherent defense. The evidence was overwhelming, and in the end, Sophia was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. With the trial behind me, it was time to deal with Ethan. I had a meticulous plan in place for him, one where he would never suspect I was the one pulling the strings. This was going to be satisfying. I instructed my lawyer to update the divorce papers to reflect Sophia's conviction and her lengthy sentence. Within days, she was served. But my real work wasn't done. I set up new accounts in Geneva and the Cayman Islands, all tied to Ethan. Then, I left subtle traces on the dark web, pointing directly to his IP address. It was a ghost from my past, resurfacing after 5 years. Conversations among hackers began to surface again. The real trick was to leave just enough of a trace to make it seem like an experienced hacker had done the work, but not too much to lead anyone directly to me. The challenge was to create doubt about my involvement, even if the evidence was pointing in my direction. I worked my way through 10 servers scattered across 6 countries. Eventually, I unleashed a swarm of bots and launched my first strike on the bank. Once I gained access, I tracked down the 2 targeted accounts and moved them into Ethan's freshly opened ones. With that job done, I called off the bank's attack, disconnected from Ethan's computer, and kept an eye on the dark web for any signs of activity. While I didn't expect any immediate fallout, I remained cautious. The next morning, another bank was hit, draining 4 more accounts. Now, $20 million sat in the account I'd set up for Ethan, sparking a search for me, though they wouldn't find me. The digital breadcrumbs would eventually point to the phantom. Hacker forums across the dark web buzzed with chatter, signaling a group was on the trail, probably the same one I dealt with 5 years ago. It was time to wrap this up. Returning to the bank, I bypassed Ethan's computer, transferred the $20 million to a Swiss account, and ensured there was no trace of the transaction. I wasn't concerned about the cartel tracking down that money. After getting back into Ethan's system, I targeted a bank account with a tracker attached. This time, the amount didn't matter, only $2 million was significant, and that was simply for the tracker. Last time, I fled because I knew about the thefts and understood how the tracker worked. If I hadn't been informed about the money transfers or the accounts in my possession, and if I hadn't been aware of the tracker on that last account, I would have been caught. I'm curious to see how Ethan plans to explain all this. Watching him squirm as they interrogate him about the money, especially when he has no clue what they're talking about, should be interesting. It was time to cut all ties with his computer and erase every trace of my involvement. This happened a week later. I cleared out my computer room and turned it into a storage space while I wrapped up paperwork for a property I had purchased in Montana through an anonymous C corporation. A news segment popped up about a missing person. Ethan hadn't shown up for work in a couple of days, and nobody knew where he was. His car had been found abandoned in a shopping center parking lot, but he was nowhere to be found. I wondered where he could have gone, but I had to get back to packing. "No!" I shouted as they jabbed the cattle prod into me again, trying to force information out of me. "I swear I don't know what you're talking about," I cried. "Damn, Mr. Ghost," they replied. "This time you messed up. The tracker led us straight to your computer. We found all the data. We recovered $2 million from the recent hack, but we want to know where the rest of the $20 million is, and the $30 million from 5 years ago. Tell us, and we'll put an end to your suffering. Keep lying, and it'll only get worse." But I had no idea what they were talking about. They grabbed me as I was about to get into my car at the mall. A sharp prick in my neck, followed by darkness closing in. Hours later, I woke up on a private jet, strapped into my seat. That's when the interrogation started. I had no clue what they were after. They kept calling me Ghost, and demanding to know about the money they claimed I had stolen recently. Supposedly, $20 million had disappeared, along with another $30 million from 5 years ago. No matter how many times I told them I didn't know anything, it made no difference. When they showed me irrefutable proof from my own computer, I was stunned. I could either give them what they wanted and end things quickly, or they would drag out my remaining time in endless pain. I sealed my fate the moment I realized I didn't have any answers to offer. Hanging from the ceiling of a bunker deep in the jungles of Colombia, with nothing but pain and torment to look forward to, they began their horrific work. My legs were spread apart, and they had access to my most intimate parts, using cattle prods to inflict agony. 3 excruciating days have passed. On the first day, I was subjected to relentless beatings for refusing to speak. The second day brought the sting of a whip. Today, the torture came in the form of cattle prods against the most sensitive parts of my body. I wish more than anything that I could give them the answers they seek. But I fear what tomorrow and the days after will bring. It's been over a month since Ethan left. Yesterday, his mutilated body was found by the side of a road in Colombia. David will disappear by the end of the day, after one last stop. As for me, I'll assume my new identity. I've already sent all my belongings to a storage facility in Denver, paid for anonymously through a bank transfer. Sophia was brought in and shackled to the table across from me. She looked terrible. Orange didn't suit her. No makeup, hair unkempt, bags under her eyes. Prison had clearly taken its toll on her. "How are you holding up?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Please, David, you have to help me. I'm innocent," she pleaded desperately. "Sophia," I sighed, shaking my head. "There's nothing I can do for you. Besides, we're getting divorced. Please, David. I didn't do anything, and I don't want a divorce. Just sign the papers," she begged. "Sophia, it's over," I said firmly. "Please, David, talk to Ethan. He can help me. We were friends once. Reach out to him," she begged again. "Have you heard from Ethan?" I asked. "No, I kept hoping he'd visit, but he never came," she answered, her voice filled with sorrow. "Well, he's not coming now. He was taken out in Colombia." Her face drained of color, her shock evident. "No, he couldn't have," she protested. He may not have known, but they believed he did. Now, Sophia, it's time to sign the papers and move on. But you're leaving me with nothing, she cried. You won't need anything here. You'll be here for the next 20 years. Please, David, you have to help me. I can't stay here. I need to escape, she pleaded, her desperation rising. Sophia, it's time for me to tell you a story. Maybe this will help you understand, I replied, trying to offer some insight. 5 years ago, there was a hacker known as the Ghost. He earned that name for his ability to cover his digital tracks like an invisible specter, infiltrating systems without leaving a trace. The Ghost had a personal mission to target cartels. He made off with over $30 million from one cartel before they brought in other hackers to track him down. Sensing the net closing in, the Ghost vanished without a trace, disappearing completely and adopting a new identity. He cut off all digital activity except for small hacks now and then, just to stay sharp. To those around him, he appeared like an incompetent fool, his own wife included. Yes, he fell in love. He married a woman he cared deeply for, but after 3 years, he uncovered a shocking truth. His wife had been cheating on him the whole time. She had been seeing her real boyfriend throughout their marriage. To make things worse, he discovered she had married him as part of a scheme to implicate him in an embezzlement plot she and her boyfriend had been running. Sophia's eyes widened, her face paling as I explained their deceit. The Ghost couldn't let this betrayal slide, so he took action. He hacked their devices, their work systems, and turned the tables on them. He shifted the blame onto his wife, making sure her boyfriend believed she was cheating on him. The final blow? He ensured that her lover would testify against her, landing her in prison for a long time. Her heart, like his, was shattered by betrayal. You exhaled, I said as she processed the story. Continue, she urged. Once his wife was out of the picture, the Ghost turned his attention to her lover. Since the cartel was still hunting for him, why not use the boyfriend as a pawn to exact revenge and make the cartel think they'd finally caught him? He used the boyfriend's computer to steal a significant sum from the cartel. But the Ghost made a small mistake, leaving a trace that led them right to him. The cartel tracked the hack back to the boyfriend, and authorities believe he was tortured for over a month before he died. Unfortunately, he didn't have the information the cartel was after. Now, none of this is real, it's all just a fictional story I've made up. But maybe it will help you cope with the situation. While I don't believe you're entirely guilty, because the evidence doesn't completely add up, you're far from innocent. Just sign the papers, Sophia. Imagine what will happen if someone finds out you're an informant. Her face turned red with fury. You damn fool! She screamed, lunging at me. The guards immediately restrained her, chaining her to the table and preventing her from reaching me. As they dragged her away, still screaming, I walked out, heading straight to a cheap, disposable car parked at the mall. Leaving David behind, I approached the car waiting for me, ready to drive off and embrace my new identity.